I would like to introduce our third speakers, BLM GLO Mapping Program and the Wisconsin PLSS CadNSDI with Nancy von Meyer. Ryan, I don't know how to say your last name. I apologize. And Ryan might be there.
Can you hear me? Tiejen.
Yes, I think so. Are you there, Ryan?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, my last name is Tiejen. It is difficult.
Tiejen. Sorry about that. Ryan Tiejen and then Jerry Neff. Ryan is the Eastern States GIS data set manager, excuse me, and leads the building of the GLO mapping and standardized PLSS across the Eastern States. Jerry Neff with IHS Premier Data Services as the lead technical manager. And then Nancy von Meyer has been involved with the PLSS standardization and the migration of BLM surveys to GIS. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
I'm called in. I'm not sure which audio is going to work best. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, you sound great.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm just going to give you a brief background and toss it over to Ryan and Jerry. Those of you that are familiar with the history of the PLSS, not all the way back to Rufus Putnam, but maybe Paul Tessar moving forward, that history that we started in Wisconsin with a public-private partnership to build a digital land set. We called it the Land Net intentionally. It was captured from a digitized 24,000K and became a real important base map for us going forward. But I have to say that what the BLM has done with that statewide data set in terms of bringing it in statewide to a fabric is really a dream realized for me personally. It's good to see the technology mature and to see this data set mature and brought along. I like the innovation that BLM has done in the Eastern States. Ryan and Jerry are going to show you some interesting things they have done to innovate with the parcel fabric and the traditional features, looking at that production and publication environment. So I'm not going to take any more time from them, but enjoy. This is our PLSS, and I want you all to be able to use it as your own. Ryan? Or Jerry? Jerry, you're starting off. I'm sorry.
I think Ryan is, sorry.
Yeah, I'm starting off. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm gonna stop my video because I'm in the South and the bandwidth is like, eh.
Might be having a little bit of technical difficulties, but can you hear me okay? Can everyone hear me?
I can hear you, but you're a little soft.
Yep.
Sorry. Got a new webcam and it's a little difficult sometimes to deal with. So I'll speak loud so you can hear me. And can you see my screen? Okay, great.
Yep.
Hello, my name is Ryan Tiejen. I'm the GIS manager for the BLM Eastern States. The BLM Eastern States office manages 31 states east of and abutting the Mississippi River. 13 of those states are PLSS states, including Wisconsin. The BLM Eastern States has two district offices, one in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and the other in Mississippi. The state office is located in Falls Church, Virginia. The Eastern States manages 40,000 surface acres, including Meadowood Recreation Area in Lorton, Virginia, Jupiter Outstanding Natural Area in Jupiter, Florida, and many islands in Minnesota and Wisconsin. The Eastern States office also manages 39 million subsurface acres. With such a large area to cover, we rely heavily on state-provided data sets.
Thanks, Ryan. Just real quick, as a Buckeye, I want to appreciate that when Nancy was introduced, it was as Nancy Urban Meyer. So that was pretty great. First, I want to touch on, oh, by the way, my name is Jerry Neff. I'm a contractor. I work with IHS Market and Premier Data Services. We're out here in Colorado. We have offices in Inglewood and Boulder now. But first, I'm going to touch on just real quick how the CadNSDI is tied to the public land survey system. As you know, the Public Land Survey System, the PLSS, is a way of subdividing and describing land in the United States. As surveyors make their way across the country, they recorded their survey measurements in survey plats and their field notes. The CadNSDI data set is an attempt to represent this PLSS survey record and provides for the official boundary of all federal interest lands in the United States. When it comes to building the CadNSDI database, for the most part, the original PLSS data content in the standardized CadNSDI data was developed by data stewards in the Western states. They compiled survey data, control observation, and supplemental measurements under the BLM's Geographic Coordinate Database, or GCDB program. All this data was fed into the Geographic Measurement Management, or GMM software, and these tools produced the GIS data. In the Eastern US, where GCDB collection was not completed, the basis of the PLSS was generated from state-provided data sets with the goal of capturing the best available statewide coverage. In many cases, this was section-level data compiled from topographic quads with a mix of updated information provided by local governments and supplied by federal land areas such as Fish and Wildlife or Forest Service lands. However the data was collected, the purpose of the CadNSDI is to assign the official land descriptions to every land unit depicted in the PLSS according to the CadNSDI standards. All townships, sections, aliquot parts, government lots, and special surveys are translated into a GIS framework for use with spatial applications. So the CadNSDI geodatabase is an Esri geodatabase that is the physical representation and publication data structure of the cadastral data content standard as established by the FGDC. And in this database, we have two main components. We have the cadastral reference feature data set. This feature data set contains the data that is the framework or structure for framing the description and indexing of land ownership or land management parcels. The cadastral reference data does not define specific parcels or rights or interests. It provides the control or reference for describing those parcels or rights or interests. This is the data that represents the source documents or records that are in the PLSS. Secondly, we have the parcels feature data set. This data set is not populated for information originating from federal agencies, which is why it's often empty. It is available and used for states that have acquired local parcel data. It is expected that there will eventually be a federal parcels feature class and a state-owned lands feature class in this feature data set in the future. A little bit more about the individual feature classes that you'll find inside the CadNSDI. We have a township feature class that contains townships. We have a first division feature class which commonly represents sections, but can also include lots where a township is not sectionalized. Wisconsin has a lot of tracts, or I'm sorry, not Wisconsin, Wyoming has a lot of tracts, or you could have protracted blocks in this feature class. We have the PLSS second division, which represents quarters, quarters, and government lot divisions of the PLSS. The polygons in this feature class represent the smallest division of the rectangular surveys that have been defined for the purposes of the PLSS cadastral framework. We also have a meandered water feature class, which shows meandered bodies of water. A few more features that we have, feature classes we have the PLSS intersected. This contains the atomic and fully attributed components of the other all the other PLSS features. This feature class also contains retired or replaced features. It also has a lot of the GCDB leftovers, for lack of a better word, in it. PLSS special survey class contains special survey features like mineral claims, homesteads, town sites. This layer is generated from a combination of special survey codes that were in the GCDB. The polygons are a graphic representation of the non-rectangular surveys. It's a little hard to see, and maybe in the example that we have up there, but these are special surveys in Wisconsin that represent Indian allotments in the southeast part of the state. We also have conflicted areas, which depict the known overlaps and gaps resulting from 2 or more different surveys in the same area, or canceled or suspended surveys. There's usually an attribute that describes why it's a conflicted area. We also have PLSS points in the database. These represent observed and calculated corners and contain summary information about the coordinate location and reliability. Point IDs and aliases are included in the attribute information. Also, by the way, Wisconsin won't see a lot of points, actually, because they're only generated for data that came from GMM. So if we go into the data source for our Wisconsin CadNSDI, the Eastern States BLMs largely relied on states to provide a framework of the data to build the CadNSDI data sets for states under their jurisdiction. For Wisconsin, and I think Nancy touched on this earlier, the BLM received PLSS data from the Wisconsin DNR. We got it about 8 to 10 years ago, but the data was originally created long before that. It was generated and digitized from 7.5-minute quads in the 80s during the project that she referenced, the LandNet project. I did go and find some some quadrangles and 7.5-minute quads here that I thought maybe might have been used in that project. I kind of looked for, sometime somewhere near the year where the effort was done. And I think it's great to know that we're building on the work that was done so long ago. We did take that data, and the BLM took that data in and standardized it to conform to the CadNSDI. We used automated subdivision tools to create the second division or the 40-acre allocable parts. So we had a CadNSDI, which worked pretty well for us. However, we needed positional accuracy improvements, and our second division wasn't entirely accurate in terms of attribution, so we had a lot of work to do. So as improvements in survey record data were added to the Eastern States, we decided that the production data set beyond the CadNSDI publication data set was required. We were using the standard publication data set as the only working data set that we had. And we found that edits were hard to track, difficult to integrate, and it became obvious that a publication data set was not the place for production type activities. At that time, the Parcel Fabric had replaced GCDB and GMM as the production database in the Western States. This is around 2015, 2016. And that worked pretty well in the Western States because of all the detailed survey data collection that had been done under the GCDB program. So the Eastern States attempted to adopt the Parcel Fabric as well, but we encountered a number of issues that the Western States didn't have to contend with. One of these was that the BLM is responsible for 13 PLSS states, and they all have a mix of data sources. So we kind of went through those and we generalized the data sources into 2 categories. And those are what we call, the first one we call alternate source data. This is digitized data provided from the states. While generally of very good quality, this data was susceptible to topology and other geometry issues, which would require a great deal of cleanup before that data was ready to be converted to the fabric. The second data type is what we call improved data. This is location-specific data that has been improved through data cleanup, attribute validation, entry of survey data, or through collection or integration of supplemental data sets, such as Forest Service GMM data. So the quality and number of issues in the alternate source data vary from state to state, but it was pretty clear that we weren't going to be able to address all those issues, and it couldn't be resolved for all the states before moving the data to the Parcel Fabric. So after weighing a few options, we developed what we call a hybrid data model for our production database. This is done to accommodate the wide variation in the data throughout all 13 states. We decided that all alternate source data will remain in the CadNSDI standard as it is, and we then identified all improved data and converted that data to the Parcel Fabric. So what we ended up with is a CadNSDI production data set in our production database. has all our cadastral reference feature classes, but there's holes in it. And those are all the townships with what we call improved data that we loaded into the parcel fabric and has its own feature data set. So like I said, we combined the cadastral reference feature data set with the alternate source and then move that alongside the parcel fabric feature data set. Now that we have this hybrid model, it allows for us to do our improvements to each data set to be done incrementally and according to the status of the data. For example, we identify alternate source townships for improvements. They are removed from the cadastral reference feature data set and they're converted to the parcel fabric where we do all our improvements in the parcel fabric following record-driven or quality-driven workflows. This targeted approach allows the Eastern States PLSS program to focus on its mission to provide official boundary surveys for all federal interest lands, while simultaneously providing a statewide coverage of CadNSDI compliant data. Okay, thanks, Ryan. So in Wisconsin, the data we selected to be included in the initial parcel fabric portion of the data set included townships that underwent attribute validation or had BLM surveys collected as part of the land buyback program on reservations. We also had a few GMM data sets from the Nicollet and Menominee National Forest provided by the Forest Service. This hybrid model gave us 128 parcel fabric townships and 1,562 alternate source townships. So we have plenty of work to do ahead of us. Thanks, Ryan. So the last part of getting our CadNSDI out there is we have to publish it. And to do that, the final CadNSDI publication data set has to be, the final CadNSDI publication data set has to be derived from our hybrid model. So what we did is we built a tool. It publishes the CadNSDI out of the fabric features. It appends the two now CadNSDI databases together, reprojects them, and we have a publication ready CadNSDI. We then upload this to BLM's Navigator site where the public can download it.
Thanks, Jerry. Like Jerry mentioned, we have plenty of work to do. Since we have such a large geographic area to cover, including the 13 PLSS states that were mentioned before, we needed to come up with a way to improve alternate source data that would be the most cost-effective and provide us the ability to map tabular information to the legal land descriptions, as well as have BLM cadastral surveyor buy-in. This is where we came up with the idea for the GLO mapping project. Since most of the BLM Eastern States PLSS data is considered alternate source, we came up with this method to improve the data type. This project involves using the GLO plats, georeferencing the plats, and digitizing the plat information into a copy of the PLSS intersected to create an improved data set. This workflow improves the geometry and attribution of the PLSS data. Once townships are complete, the improved data set is sent over to our cadastral group for review. If the data passes review, then it's incorporated into the published public land survey system data set. Since BLM Eastern States manages over 35,000 townships, this is the most efficient way to provide improvement to townships that have alternate source data and that contain federal interest. I can show you a story map that describes this process. So here's an overview. This is not Wisconsin, but this is pretty much what we do for any alternate source data that we want to improve. We start with the PLSS intersected. You can see the current state of it overlaid on aerial photography. We then run a tool that automates the division of regular townships into 16 sections. You can see the irregular townships we have to map manually. We then edit the PLSS to match the survey on that's georeferenced behind it. And then once it's complete, you can see that the PLSS now matches the survey, as well as all the attribution matches as well. So we try to deal with the record acres. We enter the quarter section and quarter section into each one of these allocate parts as well. And I can show you an example of the slider that we created. Live demos. Okay, so this is what we started with. And then once we go through the GLO mapping process, this is what we end up with. So it's a way for us to, like I said, improve some of the alternate source data that we would like to map to and involves federal interest. Back to you, Jerry.
Thanks, Ryan. To touch on that, one of the important aspects of that project there is when I said before that we use the automated tools to create second division subdivisions in Wisconsin. Those are just sort of attributed with the nominal location. So there are no lot attributions in those alternate source townships. So the GLO project goes back through and puts that lot attribution even in the alternate source townships. So making the data much more usable. Current project that we have going on right now, it's a pretty big project, includes entering control in the, and I'm never gonna say this right, I haven't done it once, the Chemaquan,
Again.
There you go. Nicollet National Forest and the surrounding areas. Currently, we're integrating 5,215 control points provided by the Forest Service in 215 townships. Many of the townships are already in the parcel fabric, but this project will see many non-parcel fabric townships improved and converted to the parcel fabric as well. We'll go to the next one. Another project that we have ongoing, it's been an important aspect of moving to the parcel fabric, is the capability to integrate new surveys into the parcel fabric as part of a record-driven workflow. Parcel fabric allows us to create a plan or plans to extract and record the important information from the survey record and store it in the database. Survey lines can be entered with COGO tools into the fabrics, which preserve the record bearings and distance in the fabric feature class attributes. We can extract control point data from the records and load those into each state's parcel fabric as well. The result is a production database where survey records are preserved and they're related to their associated parcels.
One last project that we're doing in Wisconsin is the Wisconsin Island Project. The Island Project will attempt to verify hundreds of islands in Wisconsin with unknown land status by conducting what we call a land surveyor review. If an island has been in continual existence since the time of statehood, it's considered unsurveyed public domain lands. If it's formed from the bed or is upland that has been cut off, it's owned by the owner of the bed, and in most cases, private or state. The land surveyor review collects as much information as we can. For example, original plats, maps, aerial photography, and then the surveyor evaluates the information and reaches a conclusion as to the status of the land. There are also these island inventory reports from the 70s that are based on field investigations. They have useful information about the island, such as age of timber, if there's exposed bedrock, boulders present, etc. These books help with the determination. Using a dashboard, we're able to provide our leadership a live look at the progress of the project. The data is federated to our enterprise geo database, so when an update happens to the data, it's shown in real time in the dashboard. I can show you the dashboard that we're using. So we have a total of 828 islands that we're trying to determine. We've 618 are still yet to be determined. 24 have been deemed federal and 186 have been deemed non-federal. And then it shows you the breakdown of the different classifications by island and counties. So that's really the end of our presentation. We wanted to give you some resources that we mentioned during this time. Navigator is really the one-stop shop for all BLM data, and that includes the PLSS data by state for each state, including Wisconsin and all the other PLSS states. We do have a more recent app, the BLM National Data web app. This contains a lot of the BLM national data sets that are provided to the public as a service. This includes a merge of all the PLSS state data into one feature service. There's the FGDC subcommittee for cadastral data. That's at nationalcad.org. And then there's the story map that Jerry pointed me to. And that is a pretty in-depth story map on the PLSS. So here's our contact information. If you want to get in touch with us, there's that. And if anybody has any questions, we can try to address them.
And is it possible for you to put the links you had up on the second to last slide in the chat, the Navigator?
Sure.
Yeah. You could, throw those in the chat. People are requesting that. That'd be awesome.
There you go.
I think a couple things came up during presentation, but were answered. I think Nancy was on top of that.
So from my perspective, one of the important takeaways here are the BLM has improved that PLSS that we started with, our original land net, in areas where there's federal management, which has been great. And that parcel fabric is available to you. So if you would join a tribal area or the Chequamegon or the Nicolet, and you want to edge match, you can reach out to Ryan and he can coordinate with you so that we can get some edge match there. So we have a continuous fabric for the state. And the other thing is this hybrid solution is really fascinating to me. So in areas where we have really good survey points that are valid to run an adjustment on, what's neat about that is that we can mix it with data that where we don't have information that would support an adjustment, and it could still use the tools of the fabric and the tools of the GIS and still come up with a nice hybrid model. So I think these guys have done a great job. So Ryan, do you plan to add the data from the new statewide PLSS layer developed through the Land Information Program with the accurate county data? I'll let you take that, Ryan.
Thanks, Nancy. So what's the question? Do you think we would add the data from the new statewide PLSS layer developed? I guess I'm not sure. So providing our information. Well, sorry.
I guess basically, I mean, the story is, yes, eventually the BLM would like to incorporate it, or maybe have a state-federal partnership to incorporate it in some way. But the resources, as you can imagine, at Interior are thin, and they currently don't have the resources to take that stuff in right now. But ultimately, that's the goal.
Right. Yeah. So I think I understand now. Yes. Ideally, we want to get any information that's improved into our parcel fabric and eventually published out from the BLM as a PLSS data set for the public to use. So ideally, yes. Like Nancy said, the work behind that and trying to figure that out and getting that partnership in place is something we certainly would like to do and strive for.
Kim, this is Frank Conkling. I just have a quick question. I think I'm going to take you away from Wisconsin into Florida. Joey, you mentioned that, in fact, the BLM actually is responsible for some of the federal lands, and you mentioned specifically Jupiter, Florida. Were you talking about the Loxahatchee Wild and Scenic River Preserve? Is that what you were talking about as far as the lands in Jupiter? Do you know?
No, I'm talking about there's an outstanding natural area called Jupiter Inlet.
Ah, okay.
It's one of the very few surface parcels that the BLM Eastern States manages. So that I believe it's right on the coast in Jupiter, Florida.
Yep. Yeah. I actually live about 5 miles south of there, and I was involved because there is a wild and scenic river that has federal designation, and it's one of, I think, only 2 in the United States that has that. And I was curious whether that was under the domain of the BLM or whether it was just another, DNR or something over there.
Yeah, I don't think it.
Hey, Frank, me and Andy want to come down where it's warm and check it out.
It's got great canoeing on it, I got to tell you. Yeah. And when I was at MacArthur, I actually was the surveyor for the landowner that handled that transaction. So. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Full circle.
There it is, right? It's a circle of life, right?
Yeah.
Thank you guys. Good
nap time.
presentation. Yeah.
Is there anybody else that had any questions that we missed? We have the links in the chat. What else you could put in the chat was your contact info. That went kind of fast and people want to reach out. That would be awesome to throw in the chat.
Kim, I think we can make the presentation available as well. Doesn't WLA combine their don't you publish the presentations at the end of the conference?
Yeah, so everything is being recorded, and in a few weeks, you will be able to go into Event Squid like you did to enter the presentation. Instead, there will be a watch. So be able to watch the recording. It won't be an instant thing. It'll probably be about 2 weeks-ish to get everything in there. All right. Anybody have any other questions, or you guys want to add anything?
Thank you for having us. Thanks to the WLIA. Appreciate the time to present the work that we'll be doing. I will echo Frank and Lisa's comments in the last 2 presentations. Go ahead and upgrade to Arc Pro Fabric. You're going to like it.
That's on my list this year, for sure. Well, thank you guys very much for presenting today. It was very informative, and we have a great number of people in the room today. So this is awesome.